Yo, what is up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Father Built podcast. This podcast is all about building up men in holiness, healthiness, happiness, aiming to give men the tools to build their house of legacy. I am your host, Bobby Peacock, and it is great to be back. This is episode 22. Now, last week, we had a good friend of mine, Abraham Perez, aka Cheeks, on the podcast. It was a great time. We talked about a lot of things. So if you didn't get a chance to uh, dig into that episode, pause this one, get back to that episode. It was a great time, and so huge shout out to Abraham, aka Cheeks, for being on the podcast. He's a husband, father, girl dad. Uh, he's an entrepreneur. Got a lot of things going on in his life that are really cool. So, yeah. But I apologize for the voice. This week I've been dealing with some sickness, as I just coughed. And so this episode might be a little rough, but we're gonna get through it, and then hopefully next week my voice will be better. So yeah. Anyways, question of the day for y'all is, what are your thoughts on screen time? What are your opinions on screen time? Like, do you struggle with screen time? Let me know. I want to know. I want to try to, especially on like YouTube, I'm trying to start a conversation down below, but not a lot of people comment, but that's all right. But I hope that y'all are getting value out of this. If you are, please let me know. um, anyways, yeah. So screen time. That's what we're gonna talk about today. We're really gonna break this podcast up into two things. One, we're going to break it up and talk about kids in screen time. And then we're going to talk about adults in screen time. And then at the end, I'm going to give you some tools that can help you deal with screen time, whether it's for you personally or it's for your kids as well. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to hit you guys off with some facts. I did about a couple hours of research here, and I put some time into these podcasts. So I'm not just like spitting out this information, but I'm actually doing some research. So according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, kids age 8 to 12 spend an average of 4 to 6 hours per day on screens, while teens spend up to 9 hours daily. When's the last time you looked at your screen time? Or when's the last time you looked at your kid's screen time? Even toddlers age 0 to 2 are exposed to screens for an average of 2.5 hours per day. And that's according to the CDC. So obviously, screen time is a big deal. And I feel like we're getting to that point where screen time is like, it can't go unnoticed, right? It takes me back to my younger days, right? Where, you know, this was before DVDs, but we had VHS, and like the 90s and early 2000s, we were begging to go play outside. We were begging to go be outside, and it was just a different time. Like, I heard it said once that back in my day, for those who have kids, people say this all the time. I've heard it said, back in my day, it was hard to keep your kids inside. And nowadays, it's hard to get your kids outside. And because like technology is an amazing thing, it is a beautiful thing. There has been multiple technological advances that have helped the world, and like phones and social media and technology can be used for good. And it's amazing. But let me tell you something. Going on a bike ride or going to enjoy the weather outside is also beautiful, also amazing, and also has a lot of health benefits. Um, and like I get it, like, we're at this age where it may be more convenient. It may be more easy. Like you're at dinner with your homies and your friends and your family, and you got kids, and it might be easy just to slide them over the phone and just be like, "Hey, occupy yourself," on my phone. You two kids, whatever that may look like, for your kid. But let me tell you something. Just because it is easy, just because it is convenient, doesn't necessarily make it right, or doesn't necessarily make it healthy. My son and I, we are in the season where, um, I'm starting to give him allowance, and I want to teach him some things that like I wasn't taught when I was either his age or even in high school, and especially with managing money and even managing screen time. And I remember I asked him to do something and he didn't want to do it. And I was like, all right, it's cool, it's cool. You're still gonna do it though. And I remember like getting on this level and saying, okay, hey bro, listen up. We are going to do the hard things while we are young so that they become easier when we get older. And then I had him repeat that after me. We're going to do the hard things when we're young so that the hard things become easier when we get older. And part of that is building habits, like, and for me, for my son, it's like, okay, hey, if I can teach him to have limited screen time and use his imagination and be bored, it's going to be easier when he gets older. So like I said, I did some research on this topic, and I found, like, within my research, that there are 5 areas kids are going to have trouble when it comes to development, specifically if they have a lot of screen time. Now, I also want to challenge you to do your own research as well. Um, and because it's actually pretty fascinating when you look at like screen time and what it does for development of kids and what it does for development of adults. And I'm gonna mess up this word, but sleep deprivation or whatever that word is. Jesus is probably gonna get me make fun of me for the mispronouncing that word, but whatever. And so the 5 areas that like kids are really affected in, and we're gonna break some of these down, is one, brain development; two, imagination and problem solving; three is behavioral and emotional health; four is social and communication skills; and then five is physical health issues. And so, like I said, this is gonna be a little bit of reading in this podcast, but I'm gonna break it down. So these are 5 areas that I want to talk about when it comes to screen time and why we need, especially like if you have kids or you think about having kids out there, like this is important stuff. And so first, brain development. The National Institute of Health, so the NIH, they did a study, an ongoing study, and reported that children who spent more than 7 hours per day on screens showed a premature thinning of the cerebral cortex, the brain area responsible for processing sensory information. This thinning is typically associated with aging, and suggesting accelerated brain uh, maturity due to the excessive screen exposure. So that has to do with brain development, and like I said, that comes right from an NIH study, which is crazy because like you hear the term all the time that like kids they oh man, kids grow up so fast nowadays because they're so inundated with screen time. They're so inundated with technology, or some maybe even say sedated. Um is inundated. I said inundated. But like inundated or sedated with screen time because they have all this information um at their fingertips. And what this study is showing is that it's actually thinning that cerebral cortex. I can't even say that. Um, and so it's just so literally they're aging their brain faster. From what I'm getting from this information is that they're aging their brain faster than what it should be. And so that's one problem with screen time when it comes to brain development. Now let's look at imagination and problem solving. Um, so there was a development delay study done in 2023. This research was published by the I'm gonna say JAMA Pediatrics or JAMA Pediatrics, and they found that 1-year-old infants with longer screen time had a higher risk of development delays in communication and problem solving by age 2 and 4. Specifically, children exposed to more than 4 hours of screen time per day showed significant delays in these areas compared to those with less screen exposure. And so, like for me, when I look at this, it's like, yeah, like and even as I'm saying this, like screen time is not bad. Like screen time is great. It's good, but too much screen time, you're going to start seeing these effects within your children, and as they grow, because the reality is they're not out there using their imaginations. They're not out there um, problem solving because they're so inundated with someone who can problem solve for them because it's on a TV. And so, um, and then the same network group, they did the and this has to do with behavioral and emotional health. They did a study. So the JAMA, I'm just say JAMA, I don't know, uh, explored the effects of reducing leisure screen time on the physiological well-being of children and adolescents, and the reduction in screen time led to significant improvements in psychological symptoms, including decreased anxiety and depression. This suggestion suggests that limiting screen time exposure can have a positive impact on children's mental health. So that's behavioral and emotion. And I would even go a step farther, and like Cheeks talked about this of like he realized like with his daughter, he realized that there was a problem when she couldn't just like sit and watch a full movie, and she had to be doing other things or wanting to do other things. And then the other thing that he saw was that like, and I've seen this in my son, if like especially early on, if they can't have the screen time, it's like the behavior is worse because it's like their brain is literally like, I want this, I need this. If I don't have this, uh it's going to become a problem. And so because it's a problem for me, it's going to become a problem for you because you're going to have to deal with my behavior, coming from a kid's perspective. And so, like, that being said, it just shows that like, man, look at kids off screen time versus like look at kids that have a lot more screen time. They want it. They want it. They crave it. They crave it. Because of all those dopamine levels. Literally like I said earlier, it's sedating. It's hitting all of those dopamine levels that the kid wants. It's constant, especially if you give your child an iPad or phone. The reality is that they're in control of their screen time, and so they can do what they want versus like, oh, hey, we're going to watch a movie together. We're going to play video games together. Or, hey, you know what? You can have 30 minutes of video gaming because, or you can have 30 minutes of watching this specific TV show, or an hour or whatever that looks like for you, because there's a difference between letting your kid have control of the screen time versus like, hey, you can have control of screen time within limitations, within the boundaries that I have set for you. And so the fourth one, social and communication skills. The BMC Public Health Study, um, they said longer hours of screen time were negatively associated with various aspects of healthy development, including social and communication skills. Children were higher screen exposure tended to exhibit delays in language development and interpersonal skills. So once again, that goes back to the brain development. If the brain is developing, yeah, they're getting more mature, but their social levels and how they're communicating is lagging because of the amount of screen time. And then the last is physical health issues. I mean, this one's like really easy. I don't necessarily need to read this study, but there was a study that associated screen time with obesity. I mean, it kind of makes sense. If you just chilling on the couch and your kid's just chilling on the couch eating junk food, not saying not eating junk food or even healthy food, is the reality is that they're not getting that activity that they need. And because they're not getting that activity that they need, the likelihood of obesity is probably higher. And so, but like I said, I did some studying on this stuff, and like I would challenge y'all to do studying on it. It's very interesting. Like for me, it's like, especially going into this year, it's like, man, I don't want to hit you just with like information that is coming out of my mouth, but like I want to hit you guys with some facts, some research. And so now let's talk about the opposite side of screen time, which is like allowing your kids to be quote unquote bored, right? And like, what does that do for your child if you allow your child to be bored, or if you allow your kid to have less screen time? What does that do? So for some reason today, I like the number 5. And so I have 5 things. 1, it develops a stronger brain. Why? Because they're using their brain. They're the brain is not being sedated by technology, right? So they have to use their brain to figure out, well, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to keep myself active? Have you ever like, and I noticed this like last week specifically. I watched my son as he had screen time, right? I was in the kitchen doing stuff, and I watched my son. And then there was a day where he didn't have screen time. And same thing. I was like, I think I was doing the dishes, or I was cleaning something in the kitchen, or doing something around the house. And I watched him. And I was like, dang. Like, he is like turning this Lego into like a Tesla car, and he's using his imagination, and I don't have to, he can just be in his own world, and I can just chill. I was like, whoa. Like, look at this power. And then he came and he's all like, hey, Dad, look what I built. And I'm like, bro, that's so dope. That's so cool, man. But what I also found with my son specifically, that sometimes it takes him a minute to realize, okay, hey, we're not having screen time. And so I need to figure out what I'm going to do. And trust me, sometimes it is hard. Because, like, we have set screen times where it's like, okay, and y'all can judge me, y'all can do whatever. But, like, Monday nights are movie nights. Love it. And he picks a movie, and then the next Monday I pick a movie. Tuesday nights are no screen time for the most part. I've been slacking a little bit. But once again, it's not like I'm giving him an iPad. It's like, hey, we're going to watch a movie. And then Saturday mornings, it's like Saturday morning cartoons kind of thing. And then Saturday, depending on what we're doing and stuff, is depending on what screen time I give them. And then Sunday nights, once again, are movie nights because I have them every other weekend. So, like, if we don't have anything on, like, we'll do a movie night together kind of thing, at least once during that weekend. And so there's some days where he has 2 movie nights, Sunday and Monday nights, back together, back to back. But we're doing it together kind of thing. And I'm not justifying, I'm just letting you guys know that this is an area that I even struggle with as a father. And so going back to no screen time, allowing your kids to be bored, develops a stronger brains. The second thing it does is they become more creative when it comes to problem solving, right? Because they're not relying on technology to solve their problems. They have to. So, like, for my son, and I talked about this a couple podcast episodes, we did a workout together, and then I had to get ready, and he kind of just laid on his bed and did nothing. And once I told him there was no screen time, and eventually he got up and started playing. And so maybe that was his way of saying, okay, like, there's no screen time. I got to figure out how I'm going to problem solve this to engage my brain and to do something else. And so, and then the third thing being bored does is it helps learn patience and emotional resilience, which I agree. We live in a society where it's now. We have information, we have technology, we have the whole internet, we have AI at our fingertips, literally everything that we want. You want food now? We can do fast food. We can DoorDash it. We can speed that DoorDash up so that it can come faster. We got all these things at our fingertips. And we live in such a now society where we're like, hey, I want it now. I got to have it now. And we're teaching our kids that, where by allowing them to be bored, we're saying, you know what? You're going to learn some patience. You're going to have to learn how to wait. You're going to have to wait for your screen time, because this is no screen time right now. And so, and even that emotional resilience, right? They have to process their emotions. They have to sit there and be like bored or alone with their emotions, right? And I'm not saying like alone, like, oh, you're just gonna leave them in a room and like let them be alone kind of thing. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like they have to internalize their thoughts. That's what I'm saying. So the fourth thing it does is it improves social skills and real world interactions. Absolutely. The less that you're on the screen, right? And the less that you see that as make believe, like the more that you're out, like you're out at the playgrounds, you are out where people are at, where your kids can be interacting with other kids, right? And so they're getting that real world interaction, and they're working on their social skills. And the number five, I mean, this is kind of hitting on number four too, but like they're moving more, and they're experience better physical health. Why? Because they're not sitting on the couch doing nothing. Like I said, they're out on the playground. They're out talking with kids. They're out doing things. And those are all important. Like some of my favorite times is like going on bike rides with my son, no screen time. Because like my son and our kids, they're not going to remember, oh man, do you remember like that TV show and that one part of that TV show and this and that? And they may. But I think what's going to leave more of an impact on their life is like, Dad, like, man, I remember that time when we would go on bike rides together, and we would stop and we would have a picnic, and then we would go do more of the trails, and it was just so great. Or, Dad, I remember when you went to the park with me and played or watched me play, or you did kickball with me, kind of thing. Or when it came to screen time, man, I remember when my dad, like, now I'm saying first person or whatever, but like I remember when my dad, like, man, every Monday night we would do movie nights. And he would pick a movie, and then I would pick a movie, then he would pick a movie, and then I would pick a movie. But like, it's the togetherness, right? It's, being together, doing it together. And for me, that's important with screen time, is that like, hey, if we're going to do screen time, we're going to do it together. All right, y'all. So now it's time to talk about y'all adults out there, y'all men out there. Did you know in the United States, and I forgot to source this. So according to a source that's out there, adults spend about 7 hours plus on screen time daily. 18 to 34, 8.8 hours. And that's just in the United States. I think when I was doing the research, it talked about like globally, it was like six hours. So this just goes to show that we got a problem. We got a problem with our phones. We got a problem with our video games. We got a problem with our TVs. It just goes to show. And I get, like, for me, I get it. Like, I'm a video guy. I shoot and edit videos. Majority of the time, I'm looking at a computer screen. And my eyes are going to be burnt because of all the blue light. Gotta start wearing blue light glasses again. And so I get it. I have to be on my phone playing the whole social media game, kind of thing. But I'm finding ways to limit it. So, like, when it comes to this stuff, I found that when it comes to screen time, even as adults, it has a effects on us. So like, one, it desensitizes us, right? So this comes from the Potsdam EDU or something like that. Over time, consistent high levels of dopamine release from prolonged screen use can desensitize the brain's reward system. This means that the activities which once provided pleasure may become less satisfying, leading individuals to seek even more screen time or other stimulated activities to achieve the same level of satisfaction. So basically, it's like, oh, you want to get a dopamine hit, so you want screen time, but then you realize, like, I need more of it to keep the dopamine hit. But it's like you're feeding something that continues to want more and want more and more and will never be satisfied. And so you continue to feed it till you realize, like, oh, snap, I'm in the cycle. I'm the hamster on the hamster wheel, stuck in the cycle because I'm trying to get this dopamine hit. I'm trying to get this level, but it's not working. It's not working for me. And so the Mayo Clinic, put out a statement on the behavioral impact, and they said this cycle can foster compulsive behaviors where individuals feel compelled to engage with screens despite the negative consequences, potentially leading to screen dependency or addiction. So what they're literally saying is that our screens are leading us to being addicted. And I want to jump back to that point. Another one, this one comes from Harvard. The constant, and this has to do with attention and focus, the constant influx of information and notifications from screens can impair concentrations. Studies have shown that frequent screen users may experience reduced attention spans and increased distractibility. And so between that and the behavioral, like the addiction, because you're so addicted to it, you have to look like, oh, anytime you get a notification on, you have to look at it. You have to see it. Now, not only does it affect those areas, right? We talked about desensitization. We talked about behavioral impact. We talked about attention and focus. But here's another one. This comes from Sanford EDU. Memory and learning. Excessive screen time has been linked to difficulties in memory, retention, and learning processes. The overstimulation from screens can interfere with the brain's ability to process and store information effectively. So we're looking at like our kids, right? And we're seeing the behavioral stuff and the brain stuff that screen time is doing. But then we also got to look at us too and say, whoa, hold on a second. Like my memory is not as good as it used to be, or my attention span is not good as it used to be. I think before, back in the day, in my research, they said that it was a 12-second attention span. Like people like 90s and 2000 had 12-second attention span. Now it's like 7 to 8, and it's going even down less. To like when you're scrolling, and you've been there, because I've been there. Like if I'm on social media and a video doesn't capture me in the first 3 seconds, I'm moving on. I'm like, yeah, nah, I'm done. Or like, I ain't feeling this video, boom, I'm done. Next video, I'm done. So that's crazy. Because that's messing up our brains in the long run. So, even as adults, screen time does have negative effects on us as well. So, this podcast is about giving tools, right? So, I've laid out all of this information for y'all, right? I've laid out like, yo, this is what's going on, right? Here's what screen time, excessive amount of screen time does. Here's what boredom can do with kids. And even that, you can deal with adults. So now let me for y'all fathers out there, like, okay, well, I need some tools. Like, I need some tools for my kids. Once again, I got 5. Today is all about the high fives. um, so let me hit you with these tools for you kids. And then I got some tools for you adults too. And even like if you scroll down my YouTube page, there's like 3 videos that I did about like consuming. That if you want to go back and watch those 3 videos, they were before I launched the podcast. Those may be helpful for you as well. I know they were for me and still are for me, especially when I did the research and some of the things that I did in those videos and found in those videos. Like, and I want to say this too, like, I don't have all the answers. Like some of this stuff, like I'm still struggling with, right? And that I'm still growing in. And so like I'm not trying to be on here and say like, oh yeah, I got all the answers. Oh yeah, I'm doing all this right. Because trust me, even I struggle in this area, right? But like as I'm talking and as I'm having these guests on, I'm starting to become more aware of things in my life that I need to work on, that I need to grow in, that I need to get better in. And so that's kind of like where we're at. And so so let me hit you with some tools. So this is with kids. Um First, it's really, this one's simple, is that you got to recognize that uh that there's a problem. And once you recognize that there's a problem, you got to start weaning them off the time, you know, or maybe it's cold turkey, because I kind of look at it as it's like, it's sedation. It's, they're inundated, but they're sedated kind of thing. It's kind of like a drug. So it's like, okay, hey, we're going to do less screen time and less screen time. It's like you're going to have to detox them a little bit, right? Another thing that you can do, number 2, is you can set timers for screen time. What that helps is like, hey, your kids have, 30 minutes. I'm going to set a timer. Like, timer starts now. And once it's up, it's done. When I was married, I would put the timer on the phone and it would automatically shut off. And I didn't have to argue. It'd be like, yeah, they're in the middle of the game. I'm like, well, sorry, dog. It just shut off, kind of thing. And now you got to go find something else to do. Number 3 is replace the screen time with an activity. So, kids want to do screen time. All right. Hey, you know what? Hey, why don't we just go play Legos? Why don't I teach you about chess or checkers, or why don't we go outside and do a bike ride? 4, I like this one. Implement the exchange program. So what this does is like, yo, you read 30 minutes of your book, sweet. You get 2 minutes of screen time. Not like that, but like 30 for 30, Call it the 30 for 30 program, where you want screen time, guess what? You got a minimum 30 minutes. You got to read 30 minutes. That gives you 30 minutes of screen time. You learn something new for 30 minutes, that gives you 30 minutes of screen time. And so like call it the 30 for 30 exchange program. I think that's dope. I need to trademark that. And then 5th is do screen time together, but limit it. Do screen time together. Have movie nights. Have game nights. Play video games together with your kids. Kick their butts. I remember, man, listen, I was ruthless when it came to Madden. And when I was a stepfather, I'm not proud of this moment, but I kicked my stepson's butt like 70-0. And I made him finish the game. Let me tell you something. He learned how to lose that day. I don't recommend that. There were some tears, but he learned how to lose that day. Some of y'all out there probably judging me. I'm judging myself. I'll be like, dude, that's child abuse in video games. But yeah, do screen time together. Just limit it. And here's a bonus tip. Lead by example. Your kids are going to recognize that, oh, snap, you're on the phone while we're doing activities. You're on the phone when we're doing this. You say that we should limit screen time, but you're always on your phone. So lead by example. So when I talk about lead by example, that gets me into the adults. So men out there listening to this, here's 5 for you. Once again, recognize that there is a problem. Start weaning yourself off of it. Okay? For us adults, ask the question, what kind of content are you consuming? And what's the why? Is it going to feed the brain or is it going to leave it empty? So when you go on social media and you're watching a video, ask, why am I watching this video? Is this wasting my time? Is this good for me? Is this not? Should I be doing something different? 3, and I learned this from 2 people, and there's a person that's in my life that really exempliments. I said that word wrong. That really sets an example in this. Simply turn off all of your notification. Don't let your phone dictate your time, right? You dictate your phone's time. The world will move on and continue on with you being unplugged. And someone else's emergent or urgency should not be your urgency. So what do I mean by that? When you have your notifications off, you're going to recognize what you're really missing. Are you missing being glued to your phone? Sure, yeah. But then you're going to realize, oh, snap, I'm missing the development of my kids. Oh, yeah, that my friend who's calling or texting or wants to show me this really weird Instagram reel. Yeah, that can wait. I don't need to draw my attention to that right now. And so that's a real thing. Like, I see there's someone in my life that does it really, really well. And this person has really set the example for me where it's like, I'm trying to figure out how I can do that as well. But with my work and stuff, like I can do that in the night, no problem. During the day with work, it's a little bit more difficult. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to do this for my work. And if there's a will, man, listen, there's a way. And so, and it's awesome to see that I have someone that is leading by example in this area and recognizing and having their perspective on it. And so for me, it's just like, okay, if they can do it, like I can figure out something that will work for me when it comes to my phone. And maybe it's just like setting timers of like, okay, for the next 45 minutes, I'm not going to touch my phone. I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm going to put my phone in do not disturb mode. And then let people know like, hey, for the next couple hours, like I'm tuning out the world and I'm just focusing on this one thing or doing this one thing. And so, so even for me, and I think part of it too is understanding your phone and what your phone is meant for, understanding the tools that you have to use your phone accordingly and appropriately. And so for me, it's like, okay, hey, I need to understand how my phone works. I need to take the time to understand how my phone works, how I can set it up to where things can happen automatically where I don't have to worry about it. And it's one less thing for me to stress about when it comes to my screen time. And there's a lot of things that you can do on your phone. that can help you with that. And I'm not going to get too deep into that, but that's something that y'all can look at. And so speaking of tools is set screen time limits. Number 4, set screen time limits. Maybe even calculate the time that you are spending on your phone. Like, we heard it said, or what I said earlier is that, the average, is 6 hours plus or something like that. I'm scrolling back to it. For adults. 7 hours a day. 7 hours a day. So yeah, you can look like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. But all that time adds up to something. And so asking like, okay, if I'm spending 5 minutes, am I catching myself? And looking at the end of the day of like, oh snap, I spend this much time on my phone. Did this hinder me or did it make me better? And so really calculate and set that screen time parameters and have people hold you accountable in that as well. And then number 5 is no screen time an hour before bed. Read a book. Read yourself to sleep. I think about it this way. Like, I'm hoping that like when I get married again, that my wife will be down for this, of having a no phone policy in the bedroom. Like, I'm talking like no TV, no phones, no screen time in the bedroom. And just making that like, hey, this is our sanctuary. This is our oasis. This is our time where this is like, once we enter this room between 8 p.m. at night till we wake up 7 p.m., there's no screens, no phones. Once we enter this room, this is our time together. So like, that means like, okay, snap, I'm gonna read a book. Oh, that means, oh snap, I'm gonna write, I'm a journal. If when I'm married, to be like, okay, I'm gonna intentionally pour into my wife at this time, instead of her being on her phone and then me being on my phone. Yeah, we're together, but we're not together. And so, like, no screen time before bed. Simple as that. And maybe it's like no screen. You know what? I'm gonna do, like, let's put it this way. Let's think about something that I've heard and I've started practicing in my life is the 1% rule, right? Sometimes we look at obstacles in our life and we think that like, oh snap, like it's either now or never, or I got to be 100% better at this. And if I'm not, then then why even work on it? And so maybe it's a 1% better. Maybe instead of an hour before bedtime, you're just like, okay, I'm going to put my phone down and turn it off 10 minutes before bedtime. And so you're working on that 1% better. Okay, like, all right, you know what? Instead of being on my phone 6 hours today, I'm going to try to be on my phone 5 hours and 50 minutes today, or 5 hours and 40 minutes today, or maybe it's 5 hours today. Or maybe it's like, okay, for an hour every day, I'm going to put my phone in do not disturb mode, and I'm just going to go after it. And so it's like with all these things, it's just 1% better, 1% better. There's a thing that I've been doing is I've been setting a timer on my phone for 25 minutes. And basically that 25 minutes is I'm working on one thing, put my phone in do not disturb mode. And then for that 25 minutes, I am working on that one thing. And then when that 25 minutes is up, I'm moving on to the next. But that means that like for at least 25 minutes a day, sometimes even longer, I'm in do not disturb mode. I'm in focus mode. Every time I record this podcast, Like, phone, do not disturb until the podcast is done. Can you imagine listening into my podcast and then, oh, I gotta check this notification, or I get this buzz. And so, and that just goes back to this, is that the world will and is going to move on without you. But you're going to realize like what matters the most the more that you put your phone down. Your posture is going to get better, because you're going to be going like from this to like looking up. So from looking down at your phone to looking up. And once you start looking up, you're going to start seeing things around you that require your attention. Maybe you look in the mirror and be like, oh, snap, I need to get to the gym. I need to start eating healthier because I'm putting my phone down more. I need to get active. I need to work out. Then you're going to start making hobbies. Because then you're going to start realizing that, oh, snap, like I'm putting my phone down more. I got to work on my social skills again. Then your kids are going to start seeing it. For all y'all men out there that have kids. And they're going to recognize, oh, snap, Dad is paying attention to me more. Dad is investing in me more. Can you imagine this? Like, you set an example so strong for your kids that, like, when you get home, your kids never see you on your phone. Like, how dope will that be? Like, all the time, I picture my son, like, in conversation and saying, man, my dad was great, but I say this half jokingly, but I'm always thinking about the but. Like, my dad was great, but he was always on his phone. Man, my dad was great, but he had a temper. Or, my dad was great, but this, but that, but that. And there's always going to be the buts. But I don't know where I was going with that. I got so caught up in saying but. B-U-T. Unfiltered Bobby coming out. That all being said, we have an opportunity to teach our kids, to grow our kids, to raise our kids in a way that they should go. Would you rather have screen time do that? Or would you rather you, as a parent, be in control of that? So, that's where we're at. So once again, I'm going to end with this. We're going to land this plane because we've been going a long time today. Had a couple awkward moments in there too. But, I just try to be real, raw, unedited, transparent. At the end of the day, when it comes to screen time, how do you view it now versus how do you view it before you listen to this podcast? Is it the same? Is it like, yo, I'm gonna do me? Or is it like, yo, I'm gonna step up and I'm work in this area? Because I know for me, I gotta work in this area. I'm not perfect. Especially the screen time before bed. It can be hard sometimes. So, Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Father Built podcast. This podcast is all about building up men in holiness, healthiness, happiness, aiming to give these men the tools to build their house of legacy. I am your host, Bobby Peacock. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, Amazon. Short form content on Instagram, DJ_Peacock, or Father Built on Instagram. Yeah, DJ Peacock on TikTok, and yeah, we're hitting the socials hard. I got some cool things in the works about also building a community. And so trying to figure out what that looks like for like either Discord or Facebook, and build a private community where we can grow, we can learn. So if that's something that you're interested in, please hit me up on Instagram or Facebook. If you're getting anything out of this, like, let me know. I genuinely want to know. Leave a comment below. Hit me up directly. I have some people that are hitting me up directly, and so I gotta give a shout out to my heart doctor. My heart doctor gave me a text the other day, and he's been listening to my podcast, and like, this guy has literally watched me grow up, and it's been so awesome when I get a text. And it's funny because, like, he would wear cowboy boots, and I'm looking at my cowboy boots right now, and like what kind of doctor wears cowboy boots? But he is the coolest doctor ever. Dude plays bass, wears cowboy boots, and but anyways, so shout out to my heart doctor. I don't know if I can say his name, maybe in the next podcast, but I do want him on the podcast, and he has a lot of cool insights to offer when it comes to health, and some other things. And so, yeah, so shout out to my heart doctor. Guys, listen, I'm being random. I'm sorry. My personality is really coming out, especially doing after all that research. But let me officially close this out. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Feel free to hit me up. Let me know if y'all want to start kind of like a Facebook community or Discord or something like that, where we can just invest in each other and grow deeper together. But thank you guys so much for tuning into Father Built Podcast. This podcast is all about building up fathers in holiness, healthiness, this podcast is about building men up in holiness, healthiness, and happiness, aiming to give these men the tools to build their house of legacy. My name is Bobby Peacock. I am your host. And always remember, peace, love, blessings. We are out.